Hello and welcome to a Firstpost PoV. Our focus is on France, which has been gripped by a major political crisis. The country has seen 5 prime ministers since 2023. The latest one, Sébastien Lecornu, quit just less than 26 hours after he named his cabinet. The reason is a deadlock over the budget. The political parties in France cannot agree on a spending plan for 2026, and this has put the focus on the French President Emmanuel Macron. He has named so many prime ministers, he's tried to break this deadlock, but he's simply unable to do so, and many people are now calling for his resignation. The question is, will he resign, and what does the future hold for France's political scene? Let me put some of these questions to my guest, senior journalist Sara Bertilsson, who's joining us from Paris. Thank you, Sara, for speaking to us on Firstpost.
Thank you for having me.
We've heard that the outgoing Prime Minister has just had some talks with the political parties, and he says he is hopeful that a deal could probably be agreed upon by the end of this year. Is that a possibility from the talks that has happened today?
I think it's at the moment very, very difficult to have any kind of idea where this government or where French politics is heading at the moment. As we noticed over just the last couple of days, things can change in hours. So to say at this point whether it will be possible to have a deal in the next coming days, months, I honestly cannot say. The outgoing Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, held talks with the socialists this morning after some kind of breakthrough possibly in the talks, but as they came out just recently, they said that they had good talks, they had interesting topics that they were discussing, but it's still too early to say whether this actually will lead to some kind of deal and that a new government will be able to be formed.
Right. Now, if there is no deal, which is also equally likely at this point, what options does the president have? Does he appoint another prime minister? Does he call for snap elections? What is the expectation from President Macron at this point?
Well, he could call for new elections like he did last year in 2024 when he called for new legislative elections. That is a possibility, and that is what mostly the far right, the Rassemblement National, Marine Le Pen's party, they're calling for a new election. It is a possibility. The problem with that solution would be that the outcome of that election is likely to be more or less the same of what we have at the moment. That is a divided National Assembly that has like 3 almost the same sized groups, so a deadlock once again. But that is a true possibility. Another possibility that he has is to try once again then to name a new prime minister. So as I said, the socialists are in talks. They're saying that they're willing to try to form a government. And then, as you said, the third possibility is for Emmanuel Macron himself to step down. This is, of course, very rare in French politics. It's something that Emmanuel Macron has said that he's not willing to do. He has completely, he said that this is absolutely no option for him previously. But of course, pressure now is mounting on him. Is he likely to change his mind? I don't know. He doesn't say much at this moment. But the possibility is there that he could resign, which would mean that there would be new presidential elections within 35 days from the moment when this announcement is made. But it's a rare, something that's rarely used here in France. It has been used twice in this past since the 1960s. So yeah, I think Emmanuel Macron will think both twice and 3 times and 4 times maybe before he makes such a decision.
Just to clarify, if the president does resign, how exactly does that work? Is the parliament automatically dissolved then? Will new parliament take office? And if so, doesn't that still leave the same problem of a split or fractured parliament with parties not able to agree on a spending bill?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that is true. So the government, the parliament still stays in place because these are separate elections. So the deadlock in parliament would be the same. What some are saying, and especially then from the from the left, is that a new president would give new power and new strength to the people and to parliament to actually come together to some kind of to form some kind of government and deal. But the sitting National Assembly would still be there. There could be, of course, the new president because it would be a new president, could call then for snap elections once in office. And that would be a possibility as well, then that we would first see a presidential election and then quite quickly after that, a new legislative election as well. But this is, of course, very much speculation at this moment.
Right. Now, I've been reading some things about expert analysis about what's happening in France, and something that I came across repeatedly is this fear about something happening to the Fifth Republic. I believe one expert said that if Macron resigns, it could lead to the death of the Fifth Republic. Now, that seeing it from here in India, it seems like a very dire situation, the death of a republic. So could you put that in context for our viewers? What exactly do these experts mean when they say that the Fifth Republic is in danger or that the Fifth Republic could die? Are we talking about a change in the constitution, a change in the form of government? What does it mean?
Well, just to be clear, it would not mean the death of the French Republic, of course. This is the constitutional on which the French political order lays on. So this is the Fifth Republic. There are a lot of people. So this is the constitution that actually organizes life here then at the moment. There is a lot of demands, and it has been for a long time, for a sixth republic, then a change to the constitution, a new constitution for France, which would, because this constitution gives an enormous power to the French president. This is the constitution, I think, in the world that gives the biggest amount of power to the president. In many other countries, you have a shared power between parliament and president, for example. But in France, a lot of power comes at the end of the day belongs at the end of the day to the president. So of course, this could be for some reason to say that the constitution that we have at the moment is not functioning and we need to make a change. I don't see it at this very moment happening. Of course, the deadlock that we're seeing, the drama that it is causing, and the political problems that this leads to, of course, could lead to more people saying that we now need definitely a new constitution that is more adapted to the way that French society works today. We no longer have two big parties. We actually have in French politics today three parties, with three split public, which is then the left, with or without the far left, but the left, the center with the conservatives, and the far right. And a new constitution could possibly, with a parliament that is then more representative of this new reality, could possibly lead to a new and better functioning, what they're saying, constitution. But at the moment, I think there are more urgent issues to deal with than changing the whole constitution. But of course, the situation that we're in could, in the long term and mid-term, lead to a heightened debate about the need for a new constitution in France. But to be clear, the French Republic is staying no matter what happens at the moment, and no matter whether there will be a request for a new constitution or not.
Great, that's good to hear. Now let's focus a bit on the president now. He came to the scene in 2017 as the shiny new centrist. He was young, he was a former investment banker, he was the toast of the world. He won re-election in 2022, but all of a sudden he is now almost public enemy #1 in France. I saw some opinion polls that put his approval rating in the lower 20s. Where did things go wrong for this president?
Oh, I think I have a hard time saying exactly, and I think it's difficult to give an exact moment when things became more complicated for Emmanuel Macron. He came in, as you mentioned, as someone saying that he was going to unite France, and his centrist agenda was something important in his presidential campaign when he was elected the first time. What many say, and what many are criticizing him for, is saying that he is not that centrist at all. And what many have been saying is that he has been leaning more and more right-wing in his policies and in his decision-making. And this has left the left wing of the political spectrum to be very skeptic about Emmanuel Macron, and to not say hostile if we talk about the more far left element in politics. So the fact that he came in saying that he was centrist and then adapted a lot of policies, notably the big reform about the pension system here in France, which, as you might remember, caused a lot of debate, big protests, major strikes. And it's something that many voters and many politicians, especially both centrist and on the left side, have not really been able to actually get over. It's still a major thing here in France. So I think that if you want to say something that really changed people's views and his position, the reform, the pension reform was definitely one. You can also say that the fact that the public finances in France have really become much worse during his mandature. We have seen a massive increase in public debt, for example, and many are blaming his policies on this. The fact that Emmanuel Macron coming in with a very pro-business agenda, wanting to lower taxes for companies, wanting to cut red tape, wanting to make it easier for investment in France, but the critics are saying that this came to the expense of the public finances, and also at the back of the general French citizen, who today has much harder time getting two ends meet at the end of the month than they considered that they had before he came to power.
You mentioned President Macron's lurch to the right. I'm wondering what drove that. Do you feel he was ideologically always closer to the right, or do you think the rise of far-right politics in France has pushed even mainstream parties towards that? I ask because we've seen parties like the National Rally do exceptionally well in polls recently, and I think some opinion polls suggest they would get even more seats if a snap election was to be held. So what drove President Macron closer to the right? Was he always that person, or did the way French politics evolve around his rule drive him to that?
Emmanuel Macron is someone very secretive when it comes to his. I think it's very difficult to have an idea exactly who Emmanuel Macron is, what he's thinking. He gives very rare public speeches, and he sometimes talks at television, of course. But it's difficult to get a real idea about exactly what's going on inside his head. He's someone clearly very intelligent, but he's most of all a strategist. And I think he's a very clever, he's a very smart politician. I would lean to the idea that he is looking at the world as it is today and as it has evolved over the past years. And he is seeing that right-wing politics is gaining ground. And I think in some cases he has been trying to counter the influence of the far right and the growing influence of the far right and the growing temptation within the public to vote far right by adapting some of their policies, or at least going more right, as you said, in his policy. So I tend to believe that it is a political strategy, and it's a road that has been taken looking at how the rest of Europe is developing, of course, but also the public here in France. And with the complicated, we must say, the complicated situation there is in the National Assembly, where every vote counts and where you really have to make your maths to get something through Parliament. So it's a political strategy, I would say, and an adaptation to what the situation looks like in France at the moment.
You call the president a strategist, and we've seen that at play in foreign policy. The president certainly has an appetite for foreign policy, but with the sort of deadlock that he's facing at home, at the same time looking at the sort of situation in Europe, look at the situation in West Asia, conflicts around the world where President Macron clearly wants to play a role. Do you feel that these domestic struggles or this deadlock will keep him more rooted to Paris and sort of tie his hands when it comes to exerting France's power, both in Brussels and abroad?
I definitely think that the situation here in France and the fact that, there is no government at the moment, that he has gone through now 5 different prime ministers, that it has an impact on his possibility to be listened to, first of all, on an international level, and to push through what he wants to do in international cooperation or politics. Emmanuel Macron has always wanted to a little bit stay above the nitty-gritty of national politics, and he's even during this now current crisis, he's not giving speeches, he's not talking much to the public. So he sort of wants to show that the presidency is above all of this. What's going on in National Assembly, it's something for the Prime Minister to deal with. But of course, we know that nothing happens in France without the okay from the president. So he is tied to it, and I do think it has an impact on how France is seen abroad.
Right.
Of course, everybody's talking about what's going on in France at the moment. International news has this as one of their top stories. And of course, it changes the view of France as a country, and it changes the view of Emmanuel Macron once he gets to these international meetings. Of course, it will be part of the discussions he's having with other leaders. And of course, it will be part of their, when they are trying to judge the importance and the weight of France on the international level. A country that cannot get together, have a government together, of course this will have an impact. And of course people will say that, well,
right.
Maybe France is losing a little bit of its international flair.
Right. Finally, let me just ask you about what you're expecting to happen in 2027, which is when the next presidential elections are happening. President Macron obviously is legally not allowed to contest for another term. And I'm assuming that the centrists and the candidates that are linked to Macron will also be untouchable in the polls. So who do we expect Marine Le Pen and her far rights to seize the presidency finally after 3 attempts?
It is a long time until 2027, I would like to say, and many things can happen between then and now. I would be very surprised if the far right is not part of the 2 main candidates. I see the far right, the Rassemblement National, they are gaining. They're slowly but steadily gaining ground year after year, election after election. So, and we see also that now, as this debating is going on about about the government, about what's happening at the moment, Marine Le Pen is already planning ahead. She's already in 2027, and the party is preparing details about how this is going to work out. So I wouldn't say, of course, 100%, but I do have a feeling that the far right could, after many years in French politics, then actually have a chance to get the presidency in 2027. But many things can happen. It's always difficult to make any kind of bet in these situations.
Well, like you said, things are fluid, things are tumultuous, and it's shaping up to be a very important period for President Macron, who wanted to establish himself as a statesman and as a European leader, but now is tied at home with domestic affairs. We'll be tracking what happens in France closely. Thank you so much, Sara, for speaking to us on First Post.
Thank you.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is First Post Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.